Good morning. Good morning. My apologies for that. I don't know what happened. Did a final audio check just before I went live, and yeah, nothing at all. So my apologies for the late start, but we got there in the end. I don't have any of my buttons either because I've restarted, and apparently everything seems to have gone away for reasons I don't fully understand. How are we all today? Hope we're doing okay. Kind of recovered from the shock of, the shock, no great surprise that Donald Trump won, but yeah, kind of feeling a little bit better about the world today. So hopefully that's yeah. Let's hope the world improves. Ken Hatcher says, good morning. You're like, yeah, my apologies, Ken. Had to restart the system. I don't know quite what went wrong. I hope you can all hear me. Can I just check? Bear with me for 1 second. I just want to check my audio. Yes, you can probably hear me loud and clear, which is good news. We've got a packed show. As I say, my apologies for the full start, but I will try to get all the other bits and pieces going. I don't have any of my buttons, so anybody expecting me to say good morning to them, I'll have to do it verbally because my stream deck is not working. Good morning to Dan Cullen. Good morning to Jim Turner. Good morning to Ken Hatcher. So just while I regroup and try and get a few more bits and pieces working in the background, let's roll the intro. And I can't post the question of the day because it's tucked away. So I'll do it when I remind you of the question of the day in just a moment. So here's the intro. Let me take that away. That's a bit too early for that. Yes, Ken Hatcher has just asked, do I have a problem? Yes, I've got many problems. Stream Deck's not working. Sorry, just heard a weird noise in the background. Stream Deck is not working. My audio wasn't working when I went to go live. So, yeah, trying to play catch up a little bit. So please bear with me. Mark Whiting's here. Mark, I can't press your button as usual because my buttons aren't working for some reason. But it is. Let me just check, make sure that's right. Yeah, it is Thursday, the 7th of November. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. Now, it is today's show. We've got an exclusive lowdown on the all-new high-reach excavators from Volvo. That is an exclusive as well. Shantui has unleashed a brand new dozer. We're on the case at a UK quarry operation, and we're taking a spin with Magni's new telehandler forks. Look forward to all of that. Plus, in my morning monologue, assuming we make it that far, why are the thoughts of working men and women continually and consistently ignored by the powers that be? Ken Hatcher is saying nothing. Nothing? Can you not hear me? Oh, he's saying you've frozen. I don't know where you're watching from, Ken. I've not frozen here. All seems to be okay here. I'm going to crack on anyway because things are beyond my control a bit this morning. So let me just do the intro for the Mystery Machine and hope that I unfreeze. I hope that I thaw out down in Wales. I'll be back in 1 second. Yeah, Mystery Machine. Dan Cullen says he can hear me. That's good news. Jim Turner has already guessed that our Mystery Machine might be a cat, D8T. It's not. It's not. In fact, it looks like this. There you are. That is the Mystery Machine for today. Now, I'll be absolutely honest with you. Bearing in mind, not because I'm necessarily looking for a victory, although, they're always nice. Yesterday, we'd had a Mystery Machine where the colour was obscured. So I've done it again today. I have deliberately turned this into a black and white photograph because I think the colour would have been too much of a clue. So we are looking for both a make and a model on that, if you would be so kind. And while you're trying to figure that out, I normally say at this point I want to remind you of the question of the day, but because my stream deck isn't working, I'm going to show you the question of the day instead. It looks like this. Yeah, question of the day today is quite simply this. What are your favourite flavour crisps? Now, I'm all for the newfangled kettle chips, the black pepper ones or the sweet chili versions, quite like those. I like the Walker's Max, the extra strong and the extra hot ones that you can get now. But personally, given the choice, I'm going back to the old school, going back to the old Golden Wonder salt and vinegar, the ones that had so much vinegar on them, they made you look like you were having a stroke. Do you remember that? Crisp? And you did a bit of that? That would be my personal preference. But what about you? What would be your favourite flavour of crisps? And you can mention makes as well if you so desire. Footy's just joined us. Morning, Footy. It's all a bit of a mess this morning. Can't press the buttons to say welcome, so I'm going to say it personally. Yes, it's all got a bit pear-shaped this morning, but it does that from time to time. It looks like I'm due a complete reboot. So, yes, question of the day. Ken Hatcher says, no luck today. You have frozen solid. Ken, there's nothing I can do. The only thing I would say is you're obviously watching on Facebook. As far as I can tell, everything is hunky-dory on, well, we're bearing in mind we're broadcasting on LinkedIn. We're also on YouTube. So if you go to Demolition News, you can see it there. You can also find us on, I think you're probably watching on Diggers and Dozers on Facebook, but if you go over to Demolition News on Facebook, you'll probably find us there. Footy says, I like the hula hoops plain. Just sort of, I like hula hoops, but I prefer the beef. Chris Ford, potato flavour, well cooked. Yes, the old potato flavour. I did used to like, and I realised they were a bit of a throwback. I remember my dad telling me about bags of crisps, and you got a little twist of salt that you could put in there. I do remember. Do you remember the Salt and Shake? A little blue container of salt you could sprinkle in your crisps. I used to quite like that. And my dad, God bless him, and my dad used to get salt and plain crisps, so ready salty crisps, sprinkle of vinegar, shake the bag, and then dine. Quite why you never had salt and vinegar crisps, I have no idea. And Garvin over at Mostly Diggers says, all hunky-dory on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm looking at LinkedIn, and it seems to be working fine. I can see YouTube as well. That seems to be fine as well. So, Ken, if you're keen to take part, you can just switch channels like you would on TV, only different. We've got something really, sexy and new and exclusive to show you in just a second. So let me do this. Just before I show you the exclusive video that we've got from you, fresh back from Sweden, there is the mystery machine as it stands today, and that is a second shot of it. If anybody's got any ideas on what that might be, as always, make and model if you'd be so kind. And yes, I have deliberately made it black and white just to throw you off the scent a little bit. What have we got in the chat? There you are, Smith Chris, a little blue bag of salt. You're absolutely right. Jim Turner says, I'm with your old fella too. Plain crisps, a splash of vinegar on them. The only problem, and I say problem now, I do remember as a kid, my dad used to do that, and I used to put my finger in the bag afterwards and get the salt and the vinegar. Used to love that. But soggy crisps, not a fan of the soggy crisps. Now, I have promised you something brand spanking new, something new you shall have. As you know, I've been up to Eskilstuna with Volvo, and the main reason for being there was a pair of brand spanking new high reach excavators, which kind of underline Volvo's commitment to all things demolition. So I'm going to dredge this off of my hard drive because it is quite a big file, and I will play it for you right about now.
Today our new generation high reach machines, the EC400 high reach and EC500 high reach, and they're replacing the old series, the EC380 EHR and the EC480 EHR. If you think about the changes that we made just purely on the high reach part of the machine, then we at least made actually 56 changes only on the high reach machine part, and that is actually then excluded on the standard excavator part. One of the big changes that we do on the F-series machines is we allow the combination of the extension and the high reach boom. Of course, you need to consider then that you have a smaller tool on there. You cannot use the same tool as on the standard high reach boom with the extension, right? That's clear. But that's one of the things which is a great improvement. Then also we have, of course, we improved on the 500, like behind me. We improved actually the extension boom where we have all 4 configurations there. So also for underground demolition, the machine is really optimized right now. And one of the biggest advantages and features that I would say is actually our demolition assist, which is the tipping stability monitoring system that we have on our machines. But it's much more. It's definitely preparing our customers for the future. We got 360 cameras there. We have the possibility for POC, people object categorization. So it means actually that the machine can define whether it's a person or actually an object coming close to the machines. The machines are prepared for that. But I think actually the greatest safety feature that we have is demolition assist. We indicate, it's a dynamic system where we indicate to the operator the safest position to work in. So we have on our machines, we have sensors on the booms, the arms, the linkages even on the structure of the machine also there, and based on all the calculations, it's always calculating what is the safest position for the machine to stand in or to work in. Very easy actually with arrows indicating in the system to the operator to move the boom in the better position, you could say. Of course, there's also it's actually the future for getting also other functionalities, right? With the part where we, for example, we indicate the hotspot of the tool, not the pin of the tool. We indicate the hotspot of the tool where the accuracy of actually what the operator sees in the screen is much more accurate. But for example, it would be a preparation for a functionality maybe in the future for return to dig or return to crush. You press on a button, the system recognizes and memorizes actually the XYZ coordinates, and you leave something on the ground, you press on the button on the joystick again, and the machine could go to exactly that same location again, right? We build our machines, our high reach machines, since 2005. We have almost 20 years of experience in building high reach machines. And of course we learn during generations, but we need to make sure that the machines do not look like hard, rough demolition machines, right? Demolition sometimes has negative ideas for a lot of people in the world. Of course, demolition is also the start of something new, but we do believe it's important actually to change the image of the demolition segment a little bit, and we hope that we achieve that also with making the machines look nice and friendly actually.
Let me do that again. Yeah, Ken, I've no idea why you can't watch. Have you tried YouTube? That would be my recommendation. Everybody else seems to be seeing us okay, because we're still getting answers on our question of the day, which is, what is your favorite type of crisps? And Jim Turner says the posh ones that are made from various root veg. Yeah, can't be doing those. Can't be doing those. And just I'm just going to recap very, very quickly. And Garvin, yeah, thank you for the reminder on the mic. I had it switched off so you couldn't hear me coughing and spluttering in the background. Yes, going back to this, I was at an event once, and we were in quite a posh location. And there were pots of potpourri on the tables, to make the room smell nice and to look nice as well. And there was a fella there who decided these must be crisps, and ate the potpourri. And he didn't just eat one bowl; he ate one bowl and then went for another. He actually did that. Now, Mystery Machine. Let me take that away. Mystery Machine. There we are. That is what we're looking at. That's the wrong view. Do we want that one, or do we want That one, that's the one we want. Yes, so there's the mystery machine. Let me show you a bit more because we've had some guesses on this. Volvo 160F, says Chris Ford. It is not one of those. Dan Cullen is on a bit of a cat kick. He says Cat 996M. No, he also says for the Cat 996K. It's neither of those. He then went with Doosan DL550. None of those. Lugong 856HE. It is not. Jim Turner is going for a Liebherr dozer. It is not. Garvin says knowledgeable guy at Volvo. Yeah, and absolutely one of the nice guys. I mean, I'm yet to meet a Dutchman that I don't get on with, to be perfectly honest with you. But just one of those people. I probably don't get to see him much more than about once a year, and it's like you're meeting up with a long lost friend. So Martin, thank you very much indeed for that. Dan Cullen is going for the Hitachi ZW220-6. It's not one of those, but you are on the right track. Yes, you are. I'm going to take that away because we're going to crack on with something from Case next, I think. Yeah, Case next.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, from demolition to quarrying, and this time we're doing it in the company of the fine folks at Case Construction Equipment.
Morning everybody, welcome to Fawley Quarry. My name's Richard Tutor and I'm Operations Manager here and Liverpool and our North Devon operation. The operation here, we have two operations. We have a dry screening operation and a wet operation. We have our natural products and we import BAD as well, ballast as dredge from the sea. In the operation here at Fawley, 6 921s and 2 360. One's a 350 and the other one is a 370D. And that is our latest acquisition, along with 2 921Gs. Firstly, it was the relationship with the dealer, and then later on the greater relationship with Case themselves. So operational benefits for us here at Fawley Quarry is our cycle times are shorter. The machines are ideal for our ground conditions here when it's wet. Fuel saving against a couple of the other competitors we've had on demonstration here is greater with the Case, and generally the reliability is exceptional. Yes, I would, without a shadow of doubt. I would certainly the 921Gs. I don't know too much about the bigger ones, but the 921G for us has just been exceptional, and that's why we are now talking to Case about having two more in March 25. Just the cycle times shorter. It doesn't need so much space around the yard, and the weight of them for ground conditions when the ground conditions are wet. Case for us, the reliability, the service from the dealership as well as the factory, I have absolutely no reason to look anywhere else. So future for us is very bright. We're getting bigger, we're here for a long time, and we're working closely with Case on some new development work, and just an excellent relationship.
One of the ideas of this show was that people could kind of tune in while they were doing something else. I don't get the impression Dan Cullen is doing something else at the moment, because here's the mystery machine. And going back to, let me see, there, Dan Cullen said that it might be the ZW220-6. I said he was on the right track. And then this happened. He went for the 330. the 330-6, there's 370-6, the 160-7, the 250 or the 550-7, the ZW 550-6, and in the midst of all of that, he got the right answer. It's that. When I get it to play, right there you are. It is indeed the ZW 180-6 from Hitachi. Well done, Dan. As always, let me show you it just to be absolutely clear that it is exactly as he described. There you are. It is the ZW 180. It should be orange, obviously, but it is in black and white. With the attempt of trying to throw you off the scent, Dan is not a man that is shaken off the scent particularly easy. So, Dan, you now have 3 points. You're back in the lead again. It's 6 to you, 3 to me, 0 to everybody else so far this month. Congratulations, my friend. Now, let me have a look. What have we got next? Oh, yeah, we've got a brand spanking new Shantui dozer coming up. I'll be back in just a second. Yes, not often we get to see a brand spanking new dozer around these parts, but we've got one now from a Chinese manufacturer, Shantui. 5 minutes of this, and I think you'll agree. 5 minutes well spent.
SD60C5 bulldozer is one all-new upgraded 600 PS hydraulic bulldozer released by Shantui for mining condition. SD60C5 inherits the prominent quality of Shantui bulldozers and adopts the modular design, electronic control traveling system, and elastic suspension floating chassis system to guarantee sufficient power and high driving and riding comfort, with the driver's parodic noise at less than 78 decibels. The installed Cummins QSK-19 electronic control engine features low fuel consumption, strong power, high reliability, and globalized trustworthy services. The engine power curve is upgraded and optimized to promote the working condition adaptability and machine power performance, with the total power at 450 kilowatts per 1,800 revolutions per minute, 604 PS. The engine is equipped with Advanced Modular Common Rail Fuel System, MCRS, to meet the Euro 3A emission regulation. The cyclone intake system with double pre-filter effectively prevents the earlier malfunctions of engine. The undercarriage parts adopt Shantui's sprockets, idlers, track rollers, carrier rollers, and tracks, which feature high reliability and durability and are popular in both domestic and overseas markets. The pivot and balance beam elastic suspension traveling system and the Type K floating track rollers are adopted to constantly keep the close contact between track rollers and tracks on rugged road to play the maximum traction force of the machine and increase the traction efficiency by 15%. The high-strength MasterLink lubricated tracks are developed specially for severe mining conditions, featuring long service life and high reliability. SD60C5 bulldozer features simple and comfortable operating mode. The right pilot joystick for front and rear working devices features accurate control and high labor saving and flexibility. The left traveling electronic control joystick incorporates the gear shift, reversing, and steering functions, featuring preset gears and fingertip gear shift. The high-efficiency intelligent electronic control operating system features smooth and reliable gear shifts and works with high-flow lubricating system to complete the high-angle and low-angle steering accurately and remarkably prolong the life of drive system. The friendly human-machine interfaces and all easily accessible controls, including buttons, joysticks, and cab spring lock, are within the comfortable operating zone. SD60C5 adopts sheet metal stamped and formed heptahedral cab, featuring wide and bright space and reasonable functional area configuration. The machine features super large internal space and broad vision field and is equipped with standard 17 LED lamps and compartment illuminating lamp. Shantui's all-new series cab realizes less than 78 decibels driver's parodic noise. The all-new integral AC system integrates the fresh air function and enables the one-touch switchover between internal and external recirculation modes, the luxury air cushion heated seat, the wraparound upholstery, and the standard Bluetooth radio, mobile phone charging function, storage boxes, cup holders, ashtrays, and sunshades meet your both working and leisure needs. The 8-inch LCD screen comprehensively displays the operating parameters, and the machine malfunctions are automatically detected and displayed to save your operating time and troubles. The large-angle openable hoods can expose all internal components for easy checking in combination with the compartment illuminating lamps. The engine filter elements are arranged on one side to realize reasonable position configuration and better ease the maintenances. The operating valves are arranged separately to ease the repairs and disassembling and installation. The gear shift and steering filter elements are centrally arranged, and the safety railings are used together to ease the maintenances. Shantui's SD60C5 bulldozer is applicable for the hard soil, frozen soil, and mine digging, material bulldozing and transport, landfill, and other earthwork operations, and is an essential heavy-duty mechanical machine for the large water conservancy and hydropower construction, mining, and petroleum and coal industries.
How much do you think it costs to develop a brand new dozer? $1 million maybe? $1 million. I don't know how much all the components would have cost. Let's say that's another $250,000. Dealers around the world, and nobody thought, how about we run the script of this video past somebody that actually speaks English? What in God's name is parodic noise? I get the impression that was probably done by AI, and not particularly well. AI is much better than that. Dan Cullen is leaving us, although he's probably still listening in. Back to work. Have a great day. You too, Dan. Thank you very much indeed for being here, and congratulations on your victory in the Mystery Machine. We've got one more video to show you, and then we've got a monologue, which is me bitching and moaning a bit again. So I'll be back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, we're back with Italian telehandler manufacturer Magni, and we're talking about all things rotating. Like this. actually going to go back to Dan Cullen, who says, didn't see what one that was. It was the ZW180. Dan, there you are. That you guessed a lot, but that was the winner. It was the ZW180. Well done on that. Let me take that away because I'm going over into the morning monologue in just a moment, because that is just about it for the main part of the today's show. My apologies for the late start. My apologies if things were a little disjointed. Something's gone wrong in the background, and I don't have half of my facilities available to me. I'm going to restart the whole system before tomorrow's show, but I'll keep you posted on that. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. But if you can't stick around for that, please do stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues, and I hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back with a bit of a moan about how our voices, our collective voices, are so often unheard. I'll be back immediately after this. On the 15th of February 2003, an estimated 1.5 million people gathered in London to protest the planned invasion of Iraq. It was a historic day, one of the largest demonstrations in British history, as people from every walk of life came together, unified by one message: this war is not justified. Grandparents, young couples, teachers, students, doctors, activists, and politicians alike joined that massive crowd, hopeful that such an undeniable collective plea would make a difference. It didn't. The government pushed ahead regardless, warplanes launched, and Iraq was changed forever. Why do the voices of the people so often go unheard? This question isn't unique to that anti-war movement. It's repeated itself across decades, continents, and causes, from nuclear disarmament protests to the passionate cries of anti-capitalist demonstrators. The public has raised concerns about environmental damage, economic inequity, and human rights abuses. But time and time and time again, these voices seem like whispers in the wind when they're stacked against the powerful mechanisms that they challenge. Take the protests for Black Lives Matter, for example. In cities across the United States and beyond, people took to the streets to demand justice, to call for an end to systemic racism, and to plead for accountability. The sheer number of people protesting globally sent a powerful message, but it didn't make the sweeping, immediate changes many had hoped for. Likewise, pro-choice advocates in the US have been pushing for reproductive rights for decades. Despite overwhelming public support, legislation continues to threaten, restrict, and limit access to reproductive health care. Once again, people's voices are present, loud, and clear, and ignored. And the truth is, this phenomenon isn't just in the realm of big-ticket causes like war, civil rights, or gender equality. In every industry, every field of work, people are out there shouting about their issues, often to deaf ears. We've seen this firsthand in the construction and demolition sector. Take, for instance, the removal of the red diesel subsidy. For those outside the construction field, it might sound a fairly trivial technicality, but for the demolition and construction sector, it was anything but. Red diesel was used across construction and demolition sites, the lifeblood of our machinery, powering everything from excavators to dozers. When the subsidy was taken away, it nearly doubled fuel costs for operators and firms already struggling with tight budgets and thin margins. Those on the ground protested, warning about the costs, the economic strain, and the potential for smaller firms to go under. But no one listened. The subsidy was removed, and the financial shock hit everyone, from the labourers at the bottom of the industry to the contractors at the very top. Then there's the end of the CSCS card grandfather rights scheme. For years, experienced workers who'd been in the field before formal qualifications were mandated could get a CSCS card under grandfather rights. These were long-serving, skilled workers who had proved their expertise on site, even if they lacked the formal paperwork. But that right is about to be stripped away, and without a card, some will no longer be able to work. Imagine being in an industry for decades, mastering your craft, only to be told that your experience now counts for nothing unless you go through a costly, time-consuming certification program. The protests and outcry are palpable, yet once again they are being ignored, and countless seasoned workers are about to find themselves sidelined. Then there's a persistent problem of alcohol abuse on site, as we discussed yesterday. Despite decades of discussions, research, and statistics showing how alcohol can increase accidents, lower productivity, and put lives at risk, the response has basically been no response at all. Workers and advocates have raised their voices, calling for better monitoring, education, and support for those struggling with alcohol abuse. Yet the response is limited to a meeting here or there, or a poster campaign, but no real systemic change. Perhaps the biggest glaring example of this disregard for workers' voices is the suicide rate within the construction industry. Statistically, construction workers are among the most vulnerable to mental health struggles, facing a suicide rate significantly higher than in other sectors. Long hours, job instability, physical exhaustion, and isolation on the job contribute to a mental health crisis that has become a quiet epidemic. Workers and advocates have raised alarm after alarm, pleading for increased mental health support, better access to resources, and a shift in industry culture to allow for open discussions about mental well-being. But these cries are too often met with shallow gestures, one-off workshops, or tokenistic initiatives that barely scratch the surface of the issue. Meanwhile, workers continue to suffer and to die, feeling that their struggles are invisible and unacknowledged by an industry that prioritizes productivity over people. The silence from leadership on this issue speaks volumes, and the toll is devastating. I always get an itchy nose about this time. So why are these voices so persistently ignored? Maybe it's because people in power, whether that's politicians, industry leaders, or regulators, don't feel the immediate impact of these decisions themselves. They're not the ones on site dealing with increased fuel costs, facing job loss over a certification, or working alongside someone who might be struggling with alcohol dependence. From their offices, the cries of the crowd can feel abstract, distant, even inconvenient. But here's the thing, those voices are often the voices with the most first-hand experience, the most accurate understanding of what's really going on. They know the challenges, the potential risks, and the unintended consequences of top-down decisions. Ignoring them doesn't make the issues disappear, it just makes them fester. And maybe that's the ultimate irony. These protests, these cries for change, they're not coming from a place of defiance or recklessness. They're coming from people who care deeply, who are passionate about their work, their communities, and the lives they touch. When demolition and construction workers protest the removal of a fuel subsidy, they're not just trying to save a few quid. They're looking out for the viability of their livelihoods. They're looking out for the viability of their livelihoods, the jobs of their colleagues, and the stability of the industry. When experienced workers push back against the end of grandfather rights, they're standing up for the value of hard-earned skill and dedication. When people in the field raise concerns about alcohol abuse, they're not trying to ruin anyone's fun. They're aiming to make job sites safer, more supportive, and healthier for everyone. It all comes down to respect for the people who live these issues day in and day out, respect for the knowledge that they bring to the table, respect for the fact that their voices have substance, weight, and yes, power. Because while it's easy to dismiss a protest as inconvenient noise, these voices represent a lived reality that decision makers may not fully grasp. So the next time we see a protest, whether it's on the streets of London or in the frustrations of demolition workers about rising fuel costs, we should recognise that behind these calls for change lies the reality of lived experience. It's clear that in too many cases, these voices are disregarded, seen as inconvenient rather than essential. Without a willingness to listen, though, we're left with a system that continues to alienate and ignore those it claims to serve, undermining its own foundations by leaving critical issues unresolved. The message, sadly, is stark. A society or industry that refuses to listen risks... A society or industry that refuses to listen risks losing the trust, respect, and dedication of its people. And that is a cost that no one can afford. So, yes, I think that was a little post-Trump, that was. Let's have a look. Jim Turner says, why doesn't one of the big social media outlets put out a daily questionnaire with multiple choice tick boxes on the current news stories? There should This would be published in the evening or delivered to the government the next day. They'd be able to argue or gauge the feeling of the country more accurately. And we'd also be able to tell if they were acting on the information they'd received. Same could easily be done with an industry-specific questionnaire. There are multiple answers on that, Jim. And first and foremost, and I think we probably see this most vividly with Twitter, or X as it's now known, is the fact that it has been co-opted to become a propaganda vehicle. So actually sending out, broadcasting a message rather than receiving. I think those, particularly politicians, I think they would argue that once every 4 years we all get to have our say, which is not true. And if you've ever tried to actually get to speak to your own local MP, well, A, it's hard to get to speak to them, and B, they're only interested in basically their own constituency. So voicing concerns about wider issues, they don't, not interested in that. I take your point, but I think a lot of this comes down to, I mentioned this a little while ago, I think on another one of my morning monologues. Don't ask the question if you don't want to know the answer. And I think that's exactly the same thing at play here. If you were to go to the industry or go to the country or go to the people and say, what would you like to see changed? I think politicians and regulators and industry leaders would be genuinely shocked by the response that they received. Which I think underlines the fact that they're very, very out of touch. Very, very out of touch. When was the last time you had... I mean, I've been on sites where there are suggestion boxes, and I know that some of the main contractors, the tier one contractors, actually do monthly awards for the best idea, where they've got subcontractors, coming up with suggestions on how to make things safer, better, more productive, whatever it might be. There's a bit of that going on. But how often does that flow beyond that site, going up the ladder? My impression is it probably doesn't. And going back to Jim's point, this is one of the frustrations that I have with all of this, is there is this just lack of representation. Politicians, let's do politics first and foremost. Politicians, regardless of what side of the house they sit, what colour rosette they're wearing at any given time, their role basically is to represent the feelings, the hopes, the fears, the aspirations of their of the people. When you look at the US, obviously roughly half half of America didn't vote for Donald Trump, but now he's going to be in power. It is their job to basically make their voices heard in order to hopefully steer. I don't think he's steerable, to be perfectly honest, but that's the way it works. I think at a lower level, when you're talking about trade associations and industry bodies, and I would include the HSE, the Environment Agency, but also the CPA, the NFDC, Institute of Demolition Engineers, Build UK, all of these, they are immediately answerable to the people that work within that sector, and they should be held accountable. I'm kind of tired of saying all these words, to be perfectly honest with you, but when you think back to what happened with the CMA investigation within the demolition industry, 10 companies were found to have been guilty of bid rigging and price fixing. Now, the NFDC and the IDE, in my belief, should have suspended, at least temporarily, all of the 10 companies involved there. But really and truly, what they should have done, if you're going to be representative of your membership, bearing in mind what a furore that created, they should have gone to their membership and said, look, we've got these 10 guys or these 10 companies that have basically stitched up the entire industry for several years between them. What do we do? What would you like to see us do? Do you want them kicked out? Do you want them reprimanded? Do you want them fined? Do you want them kicked out temporarily or permanently? Do they need to go and do something by way of amends? They didn't. What they did was just sweep it under the rug and hope that nobody noticed. And lots of people did notice. I said this at the time. If you are a demolition company, and a lot of them are family firms, if you're a family firm and your Your demolition business is the very thing that puts the food on your table and the table of those that you employ. And you are then invited to an IDE meeting or an NFDC meeting, and you are sat at the same table or on the same row of seats as someone who has illegally stolen work from you. How are you feeling about that? Personally, I would like to think that those people would have been given the opportunity to say, I don't think they really belong here, or I think they need to go and have a long look in the mirror for a year before we invite them back in. And maybe before we invite them back in, they need to prove that they have learned, from their past mistakes. None of that happened. Just carry on as usual. Jim Turner says, yes, but the government or the industry bodies wouldn't be asking the questions, because if they did, the questions would be loaded in their favour. Jim, you're absolutely right. Years ago, I used to travel an awful lot more than I do today. And for quite some time, I was, I can't remember the name of it, but I was a British Airways card holder. So I had access to I travelled that often with British Airways that I had access to the lounges and discounted flights and all of the stuff. And because I travelled a lot with British Airways, I was often, met after a flight by somebody who stood there with a clipboard, who would ask lots and lots of questions about the nature of the flight that you'd just taken. When you've done it once or twice, you start to realise that what they were actually doing, rather than what did you think of that flight? Well, it was late. It was uncomfortable. I had to take a later flight because you double booked me. The food was bloody awful. The toilet smelt horrible. But they weren't those. You were never asked those questions. It was out of a score of 1 to 10. How would you rate the helpfulness of the staff? Staff were fine. Yeah, tick in the box. So even if you did have a major gripe about that flight that you'd just taken, there was no way to voice it. And I do think that's exactly the case that we have with things like alcohol abuse. I think also with mental health. I think if you're a trade association or a major company, you are seen to be doing something when in fact you're doing nothing. Things like mental health awareness. Saying that you've got a mental health first aider doesn't actually move the needle. That doesn't mean that people are not going to be suffering with their mental health any longer. Saying that you do occasional random alcohol testing on certain sites where you're working alongside the railway, that doesn't prevent alcohol abuse on other sites. It doesn't help those that are suffering with addiction to alcohol or drugs. Doesn't move it at all. Mick Norton's just joined us. Morning, Mick. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Jim says, that's why it needs an independent media group that publicly presents it to the relevant organisation. Then if the organisation ignores the voice of the people, everyone will know they are full of shit and don't actually care. Well, I think we already know that, but yeah, fair point. It's just a good way to strong-arm public opinion. Make sure they have to admit that they have the relevant data. So when they fuck up, we know who to blame. But think back, and unfortunately, I mean, it was cut short, and I fully understand why it was cut short. But you think back to the petition that we were doing to try and move things forward on the Didcot investigation, and we were doing it for all the right reasons and everything else. But at no point, I'm bearing in mind both the Health and Safety Executive and the Thames Valley Police were fully aware that it was going on, because that's how that system works. But at no point did they reach out. At no point did they say, well, here's an update. At no point did they reassure the families of the 4 guys that were killed that, we were very, very fast approaching some sort of decision. There was none of that whatsoever. It was just ignored. And I think that's one of the things that annoys me the most. If you want to improve anything on site, whether it's productivity, safety, management, or even the equipment that we're using, you don't ask somebody remote in an office. You ask somebody who's out there with dirt on their boots and grease under their fingernails. In much the same way, we always talk about the disconnect between the public and politicians. When politicians spout forth about, well, if you have a few less Starbucks coffees a week, then you'll be affluent and you'll be able to afford your own home. And they're saying that because they have never lived that experience. If they were actually to go and speak to, the unmarried mother, she's 18 years old, been kicked out of her house, and she can't even feed her child. That's the reality. It's lived experience, but that lived experience, I think, is too uncomfortable for people to listen to. Gary Muirhead has just joined us as well, which means it must be getting very close to 11 o'clock. It is. Morning, Gary. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Hope you're fit and well, my friend. So, yeah, it's... I don't know whether I'm getting a bit more left-leaning as I grow older. And I always preface these things, whenever I talk about these, I always preface it with, I've been through the experience of working within a unionised company. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the union. I didn't like the way that the unions behaved. I didn't like the way that the unions represented me. But the more you look at this, the more you think that there must be some way. And I wonder about the weight of opinion. Think about this. Let's use red diesel as an example. The demolition industry, much the same as the construction industry, but the demolition industry saw the potential removal of the subsidy on red diesel, and they all went, "Oh, Jesus, that's going to cost us a lot," and that might impact, our ability to employ people. It might impact the equipment that we run. Maybe we'll have to run less because it's going to be such a huge cost. That was then, that mantle was taken up sort of in a very lily-livered way by the National Federation of Demolition Contractors. Well, the National Federation of Demolition Contractors is about 125 members these days. So if you went and knocked on the door of, who would have been in power then? Rishi Sunak. Went and knocked on the door of 10 Downing Street and said, "Here, Rishi, are you sure about this? You know your way around a £5 note quite clearly. Are you absolutely sure this red diesel thing, bearing in mind the contribution that construction and demolition makes to GDP and everything else, are you absolutely sure you want to go down this road? Because you are going to crucify the very people that are keeping the economic wheels turning." If you arrived and said that on behalf of 125 people, you're probably not getting past the footman at the door. On your bike, pal. We're not. Rishi's busy counting his money. Bugger off. If, however, you did that with the backing of 2.5 million construction workers, Rishi, like a word, pal, there's 2.5 million of us here. What you're about to do is a big fucking mistake. But we don't do that. We don't do collective. You learn this stuff from a book. You need to be on the ground and come up through the ranks. Yeah. Why is it, and I realise there are exceptions, but why is it that some of the very, very best people in industry in general, in our industry in particular, that those that are the most adept and knowledgeable and understanding are those that have done precisely as Gary said that. I'll stick with the demolition analogy. I know of family firms, or that started out as family firms, they're much bigger these days, but family firms where the son of the founder started out, he'd be sweeping the yard on a Saturday morning, 10 years old, and they'd learn the machines, learn how to grease the machines and look after the machines, and then they'd learn this and they'd learn that. So by the time they'd actually come up through the ranks, made it to a project manager and maybe a director of some description, they had lived all of that experience. They'd actually experienced how shitty it can be on site, how awful the toilets are at times, the abuse and the banter that goes on and the fine line between the two. They'd experienced all of that, and they bring that to bear in the way that they run their businesses and run the industry. If you pluck somebody from, in politics politics, or if you pluck somebody directly from university, they may have a piece of paper that says, this is one smart cookie. You know, this guy or this girl is really, really smart. But they're academically smart. They've not been through those experiences. So when you're the toilets on this site are absolutely awful. Well, you know, I've seen some smelly toilets in my time at university. They can't be that bad. I'm not going to make any change there. No. No, these are a health hazard, pal. You've got no idea. Let's have a look. Politics of various industry bodies has fuck all to do with doing good. Yes. It's just a big popularity contest. That's why they have to be shamed into doing the right thing. I wonder about that. And I'm not singling them out, because I think the same applies in all walks of industry. The way that the NFDC, as an example, works is that you become a member at regional level, and if you are really committed and this is the path that you want to take, you can become the vice chairman of your region. You then become the chairman of your region, and if you still want to stick with it, I mean, bear in mind that's 4 or 5 or possibly 6 years that you spent getting to that point. You can then go on to national. So you become a member of the National Council, and ultimately you might become second vice president, you might become vice president, and assuming that all is still well, you might become president. And that's great. You know, come March, there'll be another president in the NFDC hot seat, and that's the way that works. Nobody really chose that. Or nobody really chose them. That's been something that has basically been done by succession. You know, you're on the path, the person at the top has fallen off, so everyone moves up one. Person at the top falls off, you move up one. So, you know, you might have been really good at regional level because you're passionate about London or the Midlands or Manchester or whatever it might be. But now you're on that conveyor belt and you are chugging towards the top spot. And the 125, 130 odd members of the NFDC basically have no choice. You know, between you becoming vice chairman at regional level to you becoming president at national level, you might have turned into an absolute arsehole. But the succession conveyor belt is gradually pushing you towards the top job. It's like, and I will liken it to, you know, we just had the US election. You all know my personal feelings on Donald Trump, not just an awful politician, I just don't think an awful human being. But when you think, you know, there's a nation there of, 300 million people or possibly more than that, 300 million people. And the best that they could come up with was a guy that had done the job before badly and a woman who had never done the job before, who had worked in the background for a bloke who had also done the job not particularly well. Out of 300 million people, that's the best. So ultimately, when the Americans went to the poll earlier this week, they had a choice between not particularly good, not particularly good. That was their choice. No great surprise that we ended up with a crap result. Means nothing unless they're voted in, and one man, one vote. Yeah, one man, one vote. I mean, there is the point. You know, ultimately, politics and industry bodies, as Jim has rightly said, they are a popularity contest. If you are working within particularly a trade association, would you, or if you are a member of a trade association, rather than being presented with this will be the next president, which means that in 2 years' time, he will also be given an award for his contribution to the demolition industry, regardless of whether he makes one. That's just an automatic. Would you not rather say, well, you know, there are 25,000 people working in demolition, or thereabouts. We are facing an issue with this. The best person to address that issue is that guy there. That guy who was, you know, been through it. You know, maybe he. I mean, as an example, let me think. Richard Dolman. Richard Dolman at AR Demolition. He's very, very outspoken, very vocal about the need to log and investigate incidents, accidents, near misses, and fatalities, and to do so publicly so that the entire industry can learn from that. We've had a couple of years where we've had a spike in the number of fatalities within this industry. So rather than succession working and putting just the next body into the hot seat, would it not be a better idea to go out to the membership and say, look, our biggest issue at the moment, right now, right this very second, is fatal accidents on site. Who would you like? Because I think most of the industry would go, well, Dolman's the boy on that. Quite clearly, he's been talking about it for years. He clearly knows what he's talking about. He is the kiddie. Or things like alcohol abuse or mental health. If there is somebody within the industry out there that has got a real passion for that, never mind what Succession says, give it to the bloke or the woman that is likely to make the biggest impact on that issue. Mick Norton says, I'm about to tackle a major stakeholder regarding their inability or refusal to answer a formal health and safety concern with plant operators. They have steadfastly refused to comment, even though they know Norton won't go away. Yeah. How often do you see that? I'll hark back very quickly to Didcot. I've written to now 3 different Home Secretaries. I've written to the head of the police in Thames Valley. I've written to and spoken directly to the health and safety executive. Nothing. I mean, in actual fact, when you write to the Home Secretary, you basically get an automated response, which basically says, in outline terms, we will add this to the pile, now bugger off. That's about what it does. Gary Muirhead says, the NFTC, just an old boys club, almost like the Masons. Almost, but without the funny handshakes. At least the last I saw. All you need is paper, no experience to get anywhere. Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. And beware the person is desperate to be popular. They'll nearly always bend to remain popular. Although in trouble, I do see someone that won't bend to try and please everyone. I don't think he is capable of bending. I think he is that narrow-focused that I think that would be beyond him. Gary Muirhead says, let's hope and pray the new NFTC president can help with a conclusion to Didcot. A, he can't, and B, he won't. Plain and simple. Bearing in mind, over the course of 8.5 years, we will have had, well, in actual fact, it was queer because we had a couple of breaks in that. I reckon since Didcot happened, we've probably had 6 NFTC presidents, all of whom have sat down and broken bread with the health and safety executive. Not one of them has done anything. They are also they have retained the membership of, and listen, there is no suggestion whatsoever, or no proven suggestion that the demolition contractor involved at Didcot was in any way responsibility, but remained a member. There's been no question mark over that, and I don't think that the NFTC, and not just the NFTC, I think any other trade body as well, I don't think they have the balls to stand up to the health and safety executive and say, this ain't right. If you can't stand up and be counted on something like red diesel that's going to cost your industry sector millions of pounds, are you going to stand up against them and say, we need to do something about this accident that's happened? I don't believe you are. I really don't believe you are. All of which is a sad and sorry state of affairs, but that is where we are. So apologies once again for the late start today. I do need to go and basically restart the machine and make sure all is hunky-dory for tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow with something else to gripe about, no doubt. I'll try and find something upbeat, but I make no promises. It's not really my nature these days. Apologies for that. Congratulations to Dan Cullen on successfully negotiating the mystery machine again. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. And hopefully it will be at 10 a.m., not 10:03 when the stream finally starts. See you then. All the best.